everyone. Welcome to Laser Focus. This is the Deep Dive Pop Culture Podcast from Nerdist. I'm Kyle Anderson. Thank you so much for listening. Folks, this is the last episode of 2024. We are doing our yearly best ofs, which we have only done once before because this is only the second year that this podcast has existed. If you go back last week, we talked about best TV shows of 2024. And you know, our favorites, not necessarily best. And that is going to hold true this week for best movies, or really our favorite movies, but best is more clickable. It's the end of the year and I'm losing my mind. And to join me and help me lose my mind is perennial favorite, friend of the show, constant guest, Mikey Walsh. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Not sure how helpful I will be. I lost my mind well before today.
Sure.
Really, no, I can't even say I'm holding on, just kind of out here floating, but you know, we'll do the best we can.
Yeah. We can only do so much. We're none of us perfect.
Should I say we'll do the favorite that we can?
Yeah, boy.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, Yorgos Lanthimos. Yeah, so this year was we were talking before we started recording, but this is a weird year for movies. There were movies that I really liked and Mikey also really liked. But are any of them like all-time greats? I have absolutely no idea. And some movies that people tell me are going to be, you know, Oscar favorites, I'm like kind of don't really have any interest in seeing. So this is going to be probably the most personal and or I guess, you know, there's no such thing as an objective opinion, but like the most subjective. Generally, I try to like, you know, judge movies on what is in fact like best quality wise and everything like that as a film critic. But this year it's all feels right now because I am, as I think many of us are, we're kind of burnt on everything that happened this year. It all kind of sucked. So there were some great movies, movies that we got lost in, movies I watched a bunch of times, which is pretty rare. I don't tend to watch movies more than once. But yeah, so what we're going to do, same as last week, we're going to go round robin. I guess it's not really round since there's just two of us, but
Line robin,
line lark.
Okay.
It's a different bird. And just kind of go our list, top 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We will also talk about some like other movies that are worth shouting out but are not in our top 5, and also perhaps our least favorite movie of the year that we saw. I in general, all of these movies on my list, like on my greater list of everything I saw, are fine. There really aren't that many movies that I hated, and there aren't that many movies that I loved. Perhaps I'm dead inside, but hey, that's where we're at right now. So, yeah. But before we get into our list, Mikey, what was your kind of opinion on the state of movies this year?
A lot of fun, kind of. I don't want to say middle of the road. That's a little insulting, but you know, a lot of fun. Like, hey, that was okay. It was a good time, and nothing great, you know. But that's sometimes a good time is really all you're looking for when you go to movies. What's weird is that I think last year was an all-time great movie year.
Yeah, I think
Like
that's
all time. You know,
yeah.
There were, I think, maybe 5 or 6 movies that I personally not only loved but thought were like Best Picture winner worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And this year I haven't seen one yet. Now, you know, we're like you said, we're just talking about our favorites. There are a bunch of movies that will be in consideration for all of the awards that you and I will spend the next few weeks and couple months catching up on. That's how it always works. But overall, I think this is at best an average movie year, but it's probably going to be remembered as kind of a down movie year, and it could just be the fluke of, you know, if a couple of movies from last year had been delayed 4 months, that would make last year a little less good and this year a little better. And so it's just, you know, sometimes it's just the calendar and quirks like that. But I think if you were looking to have a good time in theaters this year, it was easy. If you were looking solely for quote unquote great movies, it was hard.
Yeah, totally. And just looking at my list from last year, on Letterboxd, which you can follow me at letterboxd.com/Kyle_Anderson. You had stuff like, you know, Across the Spider-Verse, Oppenheimer, Barbie, John Wick 4, The Holdovers, Guardians 3, Godzilla -1. I maybe said Barbie already. The Boy and the Heron, Past Lives. Like these are some, and Poor Things. Like just some excellent films. And some just like super fun, like Mission Impossible 7 and Asteroid City, which I like more than a lot of people, and just stuff like that. So yeah, it is interesting. Like when I look at my list and like Evil Dead Rise was like 27 on my list last year. I think that would be top 10 this year.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of kind of capturing the difference in overall quality.
Yeah. Which is not to say again that there weren't good movies this year. There were in fact some movies I really loved. Most of the movies that I watched just because that's what appealed to me were and are kind of horror movies, which is my jam, as you know. My top 5, I tried to be a little more egalitarian. No, we did compare lists beforehand, so we didn't have any crossover. And I will say that 2 things that are on your list would have been on my list had we not decided to not repeat. But that just means we get to talk about movies. So
there you go.
That's very fun. Okay, so let us start. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Why don't you go first?
All right, I will. So my number 5 is my favorite movie, I think, so far from this director who I really like. Previously, his movies have been very dark and quite violent and really upsetting in a lot of ways. And this one is less so in all of those categories, but still really feels like it packs a punch and a wallop. That is, of course, Jeremy Saulnier and his movie Rebel Ridge, which is on Netflix, which I encourage everyone to watch. Did you end up watching this one? I forget.
It's kind of, like when you put some movies aside, you're gonna be like, when I have like a night to myself.
Yeah.
This is one I have specifically been waiting for the end of the year to just kind of put on when I have no responsibilities that night or the next morning. But it is high on that list of yes, this is one of my favorite movies.
I really, really liked this movie, obviously. It's, Aaron Pierre, who I was not familiar with beforehand, but has since become very on my list because he's going to play Jon Stewart in the Green Lantern show. Is a former Marine who comes to this little, goes to get his brother out of jail and kind of falls victim to these awful Southern racist cops who don't realize that he's basically John Wick, or not John Wick, Jack Reacher, if Jack Reacher were like believable as a character. Because
so he's only 6'10".
Yeah, he's still a huge man. I don't want to give away a huge thing, but like he's not only just a former Marine, let's just say that. And then once they find out what else he is, it's like, oh shit, we really messed up here. But Don Johnson gives an excellent performance as the sheriff of this corrupt little town, and it's just really good. Like it's just a really solid movie. There's some excellent kind of, I won't say action sequences. There's one kind of like big shootout moment toward the end, which is in the trailers and stuff like that. But it's a lot of just like intensity and like, if you like one man army type movies and taking down the establishment, like it's definitely a great movie for that. Also, ACAB is pretty much in full effect in this movie. And also it talks about a specific law which is actually real, which is that police can just seize your belongings and your money because your money has no rights, so they can just hold it forever. They basically can steal from you because it's not violating your rights because your money and your stuff doesn't have rights. And it's just like, what? Like they can just do this because they're evil bastards. So but yeah, it's a really great movie. I saw this when it first dropped, which was earlier this year. And there's some moments in it, and just some really great like fist pumping moments, and also like you want these cops to get what's coming to them like almost immediately. It's one of those movies where you're just like, oh, I just can't wait for him to anyway, it's great. And that is Rebel Ridge, my number 5. Mikey's number 5 right now.
I didn't actually put these in any order. Is that okay? So when I say number 5,
I don't care what you did.
It's just the first one I'm going to talk about.
Great.
The Wild Robot.
Yeah, but okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, how drama works, right? Like you
yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. Number 5. Definitely number 5 and not like number 3. The Wild Robot. This is I don't know what the best looking DreamWorks movie was before this, but it's a distant second. It's not really not what the studio is kind of known for. Absolutely gorgeous to look at, but also a gorgeous story, and it's so rich in themes that these movies aren't good because you can relate to them, but movies that are really good usually have lots of different ways you can, so you have sort of a personal connection. And I think that this is one of those, sometimes we review, you know, animated films that are for kids, and we give it a bad review and people say, "Oh, this oh, sorry, it's for kids." It's like, "No, that doesn't mean it's not." Just because like it's for kids doesn't mean it can't be for everybody. And The Wild Robot it's the type of movie that I would have expected Pixar to make 10 years ago, 15
Mm,
years ago, like that kind of, not that Pixar never does. I'm just saying like that this is that level where it was like that studio was pumping out these types of movies all the time, and it seemed like they could never miss. It's it's about parenthood, it's about being an outsider, it's about outsider, it's about community, it's about nature. There are just so many ideas, and it really kind of kicked my ass,
mm.
like in the best way. It was one of those movies where I think if I had been watching it alone, I might have openly sobbed multiple times, as opposed to just trying to sink back in my chair and keep it together and slowly wiping my eyes. I know they're going to do a second one, and I always have the initial reaction to a movie I love, like, no, leave it, it's fine. I don't even want to live up to the expectations, but with a little bit more time, I'll be super psyched for the second one because that's how good this one was.
That's this is one I haven't seen yet. It's definitely on my list, but I've heard nothing but good things about it. And also because you and others have said that about it, I'm like, I need to be in the absolute right physical state and also like emotional state to watch something like that. So, and I just have not been there. So like that is definitely, but it's definitely one that is on my list. It looks truly gorgeous. Like all the art that I've seen from it looks really great. And
And
what's
the
better than
voice cast
robots
is
and animals and
incredible.
stuff?
Like I think sometimes we overlook. Like I think it's easy to take a great voice performance for granted because we're not seeing them, right? We're just kind of hearing them, and we almost get lost in the character. But the 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 voice acting in this movie is so good. Lupita
Mm,
Nyong'o is absolutely tremendous, and I wish there was a way for these animated films to get recognized for the people who bring them to life, the
yeah,
actors. And it's too bad there's not, but it doesn't mean we can't appreciate them.
man. Yeah, I'll have to. This one's definitely high on my list. Yeah, a robot and a little duck and a fox. Like, get out of here, man. Like, I'm in. I'm in. You've sold me.
I will say this movie made me realize that Pedro Pascal can sound exactly like Matthew Broderick.
Okay, good to
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. There you go. In the theater, I thought it was Matthew Broderick, but it turned out it was Pedro Pascal.
Probably the only time that's ever happened in the history of
Yeah,
people
no one's ever
speaking.
confused the two of them before me. I might be the only person on the planet.
For my number four, it's a movie that I saw a few weeks ago. It still hasn't come out yet. It's one of the last movies of the year to come out. It's coming out on Christmas Day. Um, and I have moved it so many times. At one point, it was going to be maybe my number one or two. Now it's sort of my like. Um, now it's obviously four, but like it could be 10. Like you know what I mean? Like it's definitely top 10, but I really have no sense of like I'm gonna go see it again just to really solidify, but I do think it's worth speaking about because of all this stuff, and that is Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. I'm predisposed to like this movie anyway because I am a huge fan of Eggers and everything he does. I think that well, most everything he does. I thought the Huntsman, is that the name
The
of it?
Northman.
Northman. Huntsman's a completely different movie. That I thought the Northman was okay. I thought it was I didn't I wish it was weirder.
You thought that because that's exactly what it is.
Oh, okay,
It's
great.
a
That's probably why.
gorgeous, it's a absolutely stunning, gorgeous movie that is totally okay because there's nothing new or original to say.
No.
But let's focus on the good one now.
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely think that Nosferatu is it like he took what was new and big about the Northmen and applied it to something he knows a lot better, which is kind of folklore inspired gothic horror, which is his bread and or butter. Um, I think it's a gorgeous looking movie. I think the sets and everything are tremendous. The makeup effects and the makeup design for Count Orlok himself, like you can there are moments if there's like a close up of his eyes or something that you can tell it's Bill Skarsgård, but otherwise you would not realize it was him because he completely disappears, and I don't want to give away what he looks like, but that's a huge part of it is like it's the shadow of him and everything like that, and when you actually see what he looks like, um it's really fascinating, and it's so dreary. Obviously Nosferatu, for those of you who don't know, I don't know why you wouldn't, but uh it
Spoiler alert on Nosferatu.
yeah. The original Nosferatu from 1922 was an unauthorized adaptation of Bram Stoker's at that point like 20 whatever, no, yeah, 40-year-old novel Dracula. Um they changed, they thought, enough of it so that they would not get in trouble. They did not. The court, Bram Stoker's estate ordered all copies to be destroyed. Luckily for film history, they missed a few, so we still have Nosferatu, and now it's in the public domain, as is the novel. And so it's an interesting thing to be like, I've seen a million Draculas. Like I was going through my letterbox to, they keep like stats for like what you've done this year, and I watched 7 adaptations of Dracula this year.
That's a lot of Draculas.
Some I'd seen before, some I hadn't seen. I also read the novel for the very first time. I know that's sacrilege, but so it was an interesting one to be like, what is he keeping from the film Nosferatu, which is demonstrably different in a lot of ways, and what is he kind of like absorbing from the novel Dracula and everything like that. So he makes a color movie with sound feel as much like a German black and white silent expressionist film as possible. And the attention to detail, as you'd expect from a Robert Eggers movie, is very high. The reason I'm not like it's not a runaway success is because like while parts of it wowed me to like huge extents, I do think there are parts where I'm like, I'm not 100% sure that he conveyed to the cast exactly what he was going for. And the bigger your cast, like the harder it is to make sure everyone's on the same page, I think, especially when there's like these big, because it's an acting style that is over the top on purpose because it needs to convey German expressionism without being silent or being a pastiche or anything like that. So it's really tough. Like I do think that Lily Rose Depp is fantastic. And I think she will be overlooked because it's such a big performance. It's a lot of like eyes, and it's just a lot of that kind of thing. People looking really extra scared, which feels kind of weird in the moment. But then you have people like Aaron Taylor Johnson, who, look, I'll just say it, I think he's bad in the movie. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but like I think he's pulling a face and doing like, oh, hello everyone, I'm this guy, and it's just like you're just playing a pompous British guy, which is who the character. I mean, not British, he's German, but I don't know, man. I have real issues with him and his performance in this, and just him in most things, I think.
Well, at least he's not in 17 more movies coming up.
Oh boy, if only that were true. Why is he in the new 28 Days Later movie? Why is he in everything? He's in everything now. Oh no. But anyway, so yeah, I really liked Nosferatu. I can't say that I loved it. I really wanted it to be my number one movie. I was kind of like maybe forcing it a little bit early on. I do want to go see it again. I think it's an astounding piece of work. Do I think it's going to get nominated for anything except technical stuff? I don't. And that's kind of a bummer. But other than that, still a great movie.
It's funny, when we do this, and now it's the second time, just the nature of our jobs means that sometimes you and I don't see the same movies over the course of the year because, like, this is a Christmas release. You reviewed it for us, so you got to see it. I, on the other hand, went and saw another movie that's coming out on Christmas Day that um, you have not seen because I reviewed it, and that's on my list. Complete Unknown.
Yeah.
A Complete Unknown. I am definitely on the higher end of critics when it comes to this movie. I think this is. I don't even think this is the longest review I've ever written. I had such a strong reaction, and I really it's nice sometimes, we when we review films, right? We don't want to spoil things. So we can
Mhm.
really only talk about the plot in the vaguest way, or things that are have already been officially revealed or in the trailer or something like that. You can't really spoil a biopic about Bob Dylan, right? You're like, it's like it's the historical record, and even if people don't know, um, so I just I found this movie very moving. I it's a movie about art, about artists, about celebrity, about what our relationship with art and celebrities, and I think it's impeccably acted, up and down. Like, there's a couple. It's not a perfect movie by any means, and like Elle Fanning, her character isn't well written for the first half, and then it's really good in the second half.
Mm.
Dan Fogler's character is sort of non-existent, and he just cooks anyway. He just like elevates a nothing part to something really good and memorable. Um, Chalamet. I Before the movie started, I turned to somebody and I said, because I go, "Are we just going to be reviewing big Timothy Chalamet movies every 4 months for the rest of our lives? Like, is this just our fate?" And then I said to him, "I'm not. Are we sure Chalamet's this good? Just in sense of like, if he's gonna be in all of these huge movies, this big headliner forever, are we sure he's this good?" And when it ended, I said, "Okay, I got my answer. Yes, I think
Mm.
this is far and away his best performance. I think this could be the movie that pushes. We get the push for Edward Norton to get his Oscar. I'm terrible at Oscar acting prediction, so I'm not predicting. I'm just saying I think that's a possibility. And what really helps you with your movie when you have Bob Dylan's music.
Mm.
I'm not like a Dylan guy. I've never listened to an entire Dylan album. But I know his songs, his most famous songs. I know about his switch to electric, and it was a huge controversy and a big deal, and really important moment in music history. But in this film, where he is surrounded by other famous musicians, and these are legends in their own right, and he comes on the screen and just starts playing his song with his guitar, and it's just his voice and his guitar, and you're like, "Oh, okay, I get it. I get why this guy was like a lightning bolt that came out of nowhere and just shook up everything." And the fact that the movie captured that, I think, is a testament to why it's so good. I know it's got its critics that think it's a little too traditional. I think its traditional format is meaningful,
Mm.
and while it's not perfect. Sometimes a movie doesn't have to be perfect to be excellent, and that's the case here.
Mm. I definitely want to see it. A friend of mine who is a huge, huge, huge Bob Dylan fan, um, did not really like it. But he went in expecting it to be his favorite movie ever because he's such a big Bob Dylan fan. I think that was, as usual. I think that's maybe doing the movie a disservice. But you can't help your own kind of like, history with certain ideas and everything like that. So, but I am very much interested in looking at it. That is what honestly, that's what my grandma says. She's like, I looked at this movie last night. I don't know why that just came to me, but yeah, I like that whole. And you and I were talking after you saw it that like Inside Llewyn Davis like really grew on me. The first time I watched it, I was like not sure what to make of it, and then by the end of that year, it was my favorite movie. And this is basically the real life version of that same time period and same Greenwich Village folk scene and stuff. So I have a feeling I'm going to really like it. I just haven't obviously had a chance to watch it, so I will go see it
And
sometime
I
during the
said this,
break.
Kyle, in my review. Like, I made it very clear. I do not know the history. I did not know these people as people. I just know them as musicians, and I know their songs. I didn't know, about their interpersonal relationships, their successes, their failures, anything like that. Like Scoot McNairy plays um, Woody Guthrie, and
Mm.
I knew nothing about Woody Guthrie, his personal life, and like Scoot McNairy gives in such an amazing performance. I actually kind of can't believe how good it is, and because what he got through was ill at this point
Mm.
in his life, and if this movie, and I said this, if this movie is completely just made up, right? If it's like very loose with the facts, I don't care. I will treat it as fiction, and I can still appreciate the things it's saying because it has things to say, about stuff that I care about. So I was unburdened by expectations, and I was even unburdened by history. Maybe that was a huge advantage. Maybe if you know everything about Bob Dylan's life, maybe you'll hate this. I get it. It's hard to it's hard to do these things. And I don't fault you because if they made a biopic about Rivers Cuomo when he was writing the Blue Album in Pinkerton, I'd have thoughts.
Right.
I would have thoughts. So I don't hold that against anybody. I'm just telling you how I reacted to it.
Which is fair. That's all any of us can do. I will tell you how I reacted to this next movie, which is that for a movie where literally not much actually happens, it is one of the most tense and upsetting movies I've seen in a really long time. It is it really kind of blew me away. It played at I saw it via Fantasia Festival this year. It is a French Canadian film. It's shot by people from Quebec, shot in Montreal. It's called Red Rooms. It is, I think, available to rent at least on Prime now, and I'm very pleased about it. It's getting a lot of buzz nowadays, which is really good. But so the premise of this movie is that there's a high-profile serial killer case. This man is accused of like doing really bad murders. Kyle, what a weird thing to say, but like murdering these young kind of high school girls in particularly gruesome ways, and the scuttlebutt is or whatever that he filmed them and put them on the dark web essentially. And so as the movie starts, there's this young woman who is a fashion model who is obsessed with this case, and you're not 100%, you're with her the entire time, you're not 100% sure why she's obsessed with this case. Is she just like a weird fan of this guy? Is because there's another character who she meets who is this other girl who is like also goes to the trial every day and is in fact like kind of fanatical about this guy, thinks he's innocent and all this stuff. And our main character just like sits in her apartment, which is completely sparse except for this very elaborate computer setup, and she is like searching the dark web for this footage, and you're just sort of like, is this good? And like the more she's there, the more people spot her and are like, why are you at this trial every day? Like, what is in it for you and all this stuff? And it's hard to kind of really describe what it's about other than just it's kind of, it's true crime obsession. It's about kind of the celebrity of criminals and especially like murderers and serial killers, and how people kind of get lost in the these horrible crimes, but also like they kind of get off on it, for lack of a better word. It's a really, really, really interesting and good movie. It was written and directed by Pascal Plante, perhaps, and it has this amazing central performance by Juliette Garibay, who is a French-Canadian actress. And so much of it is just her face, often illuminated by the red screen of her Red Room computer. And I hope everyone watches it. I think it's excellent. Like, this was not a movie that I was expecting to be thinking about this much. 6 months after I saw it, and it's stayed with me, and I love it. So, anyway, Red Rooms, or Le Chambre Rouge.
Sounds like a real uplifter.
Look, you know who you're talking to.
Listen, I'm just surprised it's not Italian.
No, I
You know?
know. Look, at least it's in a different language, okay?
Yeah. um, okay, before I get to my number three, which is definitely number three and not arbitrarily the one I'm saying third,
Uh-huh.
I thought I would give you the two movies that just missed making my top five.
Okay.
Furiosa.
Mhm.
And the reason is that you and I did an entire podcast about the Mad Max franchise after Furiosa came out. And then we talked about it again on another podcast. We don't have to keep talking about it.
Fair.
And then the one that I did consider was Abigail.
Mm.
Abigail is just a really fun movie. It's really intense, and it does that. It technically qualifies as horror comedy, but it really does feel like a horror movie at times. And that includes at the beginning. I kind of wish people could see Abigail without having any idea what was going to happen, because the first 40 minutes of that movie work as a heist gone wrong film, like an intense, terrifying heist gone wrong film, and then it just turns into a totally different genre.
Mm.
Really liked it. Those two almost made it, and then I had. Do you want? I have a category of like fun movies that I would never put in the top five, but I wanted to mention. You want to? Should I save those? Or do you want those?
Let's do those before number ones.
Okay. All right. So the probably the most obscure movie on my top five here is this is the only one that people might not have heard of, was Tuesday with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She plays a mother whose daughter is dying, and death shows up in the form of a shape-shifting macaw, a very strange little bird. And this is a strange little movie in the best way. It is operating on its own frequency. It is slow at times, slow and deliberate, but always just kind of like mesmerizing. I went into this film expecting one thing, and I wasn't sure if it would be good or not. And what I got, I really loved, and I'm still thinking about this movie many months later. Um, I think it's I think it's the type where you probably were better off seeing it in the theater. That way, you weren't on your phone. Don't take your phone out in theaters, you monsters. Um, because if it could be easy. I know it's easy, and I'm not like this never happens to me at home. You can get distracted, but some great performances. We did our list of best characters of 2024, and I included Tuesday's bird death. Death Bird
Mhm.
on mine. It's that good. I am Go seek it out. Go seek it out if you're looking for something different and something interesting that is very, very funny at times and very, very emotional at others, and sometimes very funny and very emotional in the exact same scene at the exact same moment, which is a hard, high wire act to walk. But this movie does it.
Yeah, this was never even on my radar. I think we wrote up the trailer for it. You really, really wanted to see it, and did, obviously. And yeah, I remember you saying how much you really liked it. Um, it looks like it's gotten okay. Cover appraisal elsewhere. 76 on Rotten Tomatoes, 69 nice on Metacritic, 6.3 on IMDb. It's not. I feel like most people were probably expecting something else, given the kind of caliber of people in it, or maybe just were not used to what an A24, like a smaller A24 movie is. I
Yeah.
think it's an A24, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Um, but yeah, I forgot this movie even existed until you put it on your list. So I made a short film in college called Tuesday, and I was like, "Is that your favorite movie? This
Would it
short
be
film?
funny? Would it be funny?
That'd be pretty great."
Kyle, number three is your short film from college,
Which is no one's favorite short film.
which I assume
Uh,
is in Italian.
that was before I was really into Italian movies.
Oh,
It is
mamma
a zombie
mia.
movie. I'm still into
Yeah,
zombie
sure.
movies.
Sure.
Um, that would be embarrassing if anybody watched that today. I think I don't even actually think it's on anybody's
As opposed to
online.
what? Everybody else's college films?
Look, some people were like pretty decent. We were not good filmmakers at the time. And still aren't, which is why neither of us, and I'm talking about my best friend of whom I made the movie, neither of us are in the film business. So, but anyway, Okay, so we are in our top two era. um, I'm going to. It is.
Wait. Do you want to? Do you want to do worst now? Quickly run through our
Who's the host of this?
worst of the year. Should we do it real quick?
I no, because I still have to do my uh fun ones.
So let's do the fun ones. We've only got two.
You already said those ones.
No. Those are the two that did not make the top 5 that were in consideration. Those were not. Those are higher quality than the fun ones.
Let's do honorable mentions and worsts before we get to number 1. All right?
But I also have interesting messes.
I don't care.
The interesting messes are interesting though.
You decide where you say those words. I am going to say this. My number 2 is I almost said the name of it. It's Long Legs. Fuck it. It's the highest horror movie on my list. I was going to shout out some of the other horror movies that are close to, but not quite in the top 5. Alien Romulus was one. This was one to kind of get back what you were saying was like, while watching it, I'm like, I don't love this, but I can't wait to watch it again. It's one of those kind of like, this is a fun, like there's enough about it that I think is enjoyable that I'm like, I will overlook some of the stuff that I think is legitimately bad about it. But so that one is below. I also just saw The Substance, which I know is a lot of people's like number 1 or like very high. I was not as bowled over by it, and I think the hype was the problem. I did not do anything. I was warned about how gross it was, and it's very gross. But once you know that grossness is coming, it's not a surprise, and there's nothing else surprising about the movie. But ones that really did surprise me, I will say The First Omen is like a legitimately good movie. Like, did not expect a legacy prequel to kind of a 70s, like almost schlocky horror movie from the 70s. Like, it's a little higher crust than most, but it's still kind of silly. I did not expect that to be so good, and has an amazing central performance by what's her face from Game of Thrones, who played young Baratheon girl who gets murdered. Anyway, doesn't matter. Cersei's daughter.
Oh, Marcella?
Yeah, Marcella. Who gets murdered?
What she is murdered.
Yeah,
Cersei's daughter's murdered. She's murdered on the show. She's murdered by the sand snakes and
yeah, that's right. Anyway, the actress Nell Tiger Free, which is an amazing name.
Great name.
She's tremendous as the lead in it. Oddity is another one, which I think I've mentioned on some film podcast recently. That's a little Irish horror movie, which is on Shudder. It's just very weird, but I really dig it. And then the one I saw most recent, well, other than The Substance, but I saw this in theaters just a few weeks ago. I thought it absolutely ripped. Was Heretic, and I think in a just world, Hugh Grant would get a nomination for this, but he won't because it's a horror movie. But I thought Heretic was so good, and did surprise me in a lot of ways. I know a lot of people were sort of like iffy on the ending, but I thought the ending worked really well. But he's great in it, and the two lead actresses, Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, are also super great in it. So, okay. But to get to my actual number 2 is the movie that I have watched the most times this year, which is Osgood Perkins' movie Long Legs. And I know that some people do not think it's as good as a lot of other people do. I think it's better every time I watch it. The first time I watched it 3 times.
That's a lot of times.
It's not nothing. I think the most times I've ever watched a movie in the year that it came out was The Batman a few years ago, because I just kept going back and seeing it. I only saw this one once in theaters. It was the screening, and then I got the Blu-ray, and so I watched it a few more times. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. When I was at the screening, I was like, I'm like, is this a joke? Like, is this a parody of a horror movie? Like, it's so strange as to almost be a joke at times. And Nicolas Cage's performance is so over the top and off the wall. It's out there. And I think in retrospect, that is kind of what makes it even scarier, which is that like it is ridiculous. The concept is ridiculous, and yet it is happening, so it's scary. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
In fact, everything you're saying, I've because of the mixed reviews, I've very much been like, eventually it'll come on TV and I'll watch it or something. Your description actually makes it sound way better than what I've heard.
yeah, it's
It sounds interesting. It sounds different.
it's very much that, like, and if you've seen any of you, I don't think you, Mikey, have, but maybe some of our listeners have, um, seen any other Oz Perkins movies, his approach is very kind of sparse. I would highly recommend The Black Coat's Daughter, which was his first feature. Um, the couple he made after that are kind of less successful in my opinion, but I do think that like he has a weird approach to like stories you've seen before. Like this is obviously kind of inspired by or just a straight up take on stuff like Silence of the Lambs, where it's like they're looking for a serial killer. They're, or Seven or something like that, where it's just like it's so weird and it's like strangely biblical kind of tinge to it and everything like that. Um, and then once you find out what's actually happening, you're like, what? And then like it is happening and it's really scary. Like because it's so out there. Um so I really liked it. I I'm glad that it made a crap ton of money, at least a lot of money for a Neon release that wasn't like Parasite or something like that. Um and Oz Perkins is already going to make his next movie's already coming out like in a couple months. It's the some adaptation of the monkey or something like that. The
Yeah.
monkey's paw,
Yeah.
basically. But I think Micah Monroe is tremendous. Blair Underwood actually gives like one of maybe the movie's best performance in my opinion. He's the grizzled FBI agent who is working these serial killer cases and brings Micah Monroe's rookie onto it. Alicia Witt is really intense in it. She plays Micah's character's mom, and then of course Nicolas Cage, who is as Nicolas Cagey as you can be, and under so much makeup, and you laugh at how over the top he is, and then you're like, oh, but it's still, because what if that person was real? You'd be terrified. And so I like stuff like that. So anyway, I really liked Long Legs. I think it kind of peaked early in terms of stuff this year, but it has remained with me the more I have watched it. All right, your number two.
My number two is going to be preceded by all of the fun ones.
Great.
Just want to throw these out again. Twisters, super fun. Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice might be quote unquote the worst movie that I still really had fun with. It's just like insanely plotted, like just characters and subplots that are beyond useless. But Michael Keaton and Catherine O'Hara are so good. I don't care. Roadhouse, which didn't even get a theatrical release. It gets a little silly in Act 3, but before that, like, and by the way, I love the original Roadhouse. Like, love it. Cheesy, wonderful goodness. I just really enjoyed this one too, and it really looks good. The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, one of the worst titled movies of the year, but it is really, really a good time. That movie definitely deserved a bigger audience. And then
I thought it was okay.
I just like I think that I just went into it with expectations that were exactly met. So I was like, yeah, this is what I was hoping to get. This is what I was hoping to get out of this movie. And then I'm not going to defend this movie because it is the worst third act of the year. But I like the first 2/3 of Argyle, a movie everybody hated.
I didn't see it because
everybody hated Argyle except for me. And I just really, like, I went into that movie with the lowest expectations. Did not think there was going to be any way they could pull off the mystery in a good way in the first 2/3 of that movie. I just thought it was so good. And unfortunately, it's like the dumbest ending you've ever seen. So yeah, just wanted to shout those out before I get to the only movie I saw in theaters twice this year, Dune Part 2. I
DPT.
Yeah, it's the only one that I was like, you know what? Because just hard to get to the theater sometimes for me. So if I see it for work, I don't necessarily go back. I wanted to just go back and enjoy that movie on IMAX again.
Mm,
Um, I think it's a very good movie on its own, but I think it's an incredible spectacle and just an incredible bit of filmmaking by Denis Villeneuve.
not even
No,
close.
Denis Villeneuve.
Denis.
Denis
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 Villeneuve,
Villeneuve. Okay,
because he's
this is why I
French.
never. This is why I don't even try the names. This is, but you're seeing you're seeing movies in Montreal. You know how to say it.
I sure
Um,
am. That's where he's from. I don't know
it
if it's
is.
Montreal specifically, but he's
It
French
is.
Canadian.
It's just kind of the theater, kind of a theater experience I really want sometimes, which is just like big but really well done.
Mm,
Right? Sometimes spectacle's enough. Right? Sometimes you're just like, I'm just gonna go in, turn off my brain, just have a good time, and let the ships fly, let the explosions happen, right? Just let people chase cars and stuff. But that movie's got that movie's way better than that. Um, and I went back to see it, like even just the simple shots of like the soldiers like quietly flying up the cliffside, right? That
hmm.
everybody loved. Yeah, yeah. It looks real. It looks beautiful, and it's got some, you know, Rebecca Ferguson, who's one of my favorites, is in that movie, and I just, yeah, Dune Part Two. I think that this, but he does. I don't think anybody quite does blockbusters the way he's doing them,
Yeah.
right? Like Nolan's are bigger, but he can make films that are both big but somehow quiet in the same thing. Like Blade
Hmm.
Runner 2049 is like that. It's like this huge film that at times is just so quiet, and it's I hope he makes a third one. I do. I really hope he gets. I know they're talking about it, and I hope we get Dune Part 3.
I'm hoping so too. I liked the first Dune, but really loved the second one. This is the first of two movies that would have been on my list had Mikey not chosen him. Um, it's gorgeous. It's a huge, giant, gorgeous spectacle of a movie. And I think the performances are, I think, uniformly better and more interesting in the second movie. I think the story is much more kind of straightforwardly um, relatable. It also kind of positions Paul as like, people online kind of, and our Dune expert Matt Caron will attest to this, where like don't realize that you're not supposed to really be on Paul's side by the end. People don't understand that that's kind of the whole point is that he seems like he's going to be the savior, and then it's like, oh, he is the savior, but at what cost, kind of thing. It's really, Zendaya is tremendous. Like she's going to probably get an Oscar nomination, I think, for Challengers. It's very possible anyway. But she's equally good in this. This is not going to, I don't think, maybe Javier Bardem, but I don't think there's going to be a ton of petitions for acting nominations for this movie. But everybody in it is like uniformly good, and this is the second of two Timothy Chalamet movies on your list, and like
I know. Can you
I've
believe it?
been, yeah, it's weird.
And here I
I've
was questioning if he's worth if he deserves this. And by the end of the year, yes, he is very he's that good. I think
well,
he's
like he's the kid is a star. Do you
yeah
understand? But
yeah.
he's also, as we found out in this movie, and I'm assuming I will agree with you on most levels, I would imagine, with A Complete Unknown. He has grown into being like a good actor as well as just being like a compelling screen presence. Like, which is not to say that like he's not good in Call Me by Your Name or something like that, but like I have been sort of waiting for the standout Timothy Chalamet performance, and I think between those two performances, like I think we've gotten to that point.
Well, you know what it was with Dune? I thought he was. I think he's phenomenal in both Dune movies. The reason I went into A Complete Unknown wondering if he was deserving of all of this is because it just felt like Dune. He was perfectly cast in Dune, right? Like just the perfect combination of
Hmm.
actor and role, and that doesn't necessarily mean like just because you get the perfect role, right? Like let's think of someone like Mark Wahlberg, right?
Mhm.
There are movies where Mark Wahlberg gives Oscar quality performances. And then there are movies where he's not very good. And just sometimes you get the right role as an actor, and sometimes you get the wrong role. But so maybe I was like, is Dune just like the perfect role for him? But by the end of the year, I got my answer that he's just one of our best actors, and I guess I don't think in terms like this, but he probably make the argument he's our best young star, right?
Mm.
Like, um, but yeah, I honestly, if they re-released both Dune movies in IMAX like next week, I'd probably be like, well, sorry, family, I have to disappear for 7 hours.
I would do that for sure.
Yeah,
They just recently, as of recording, re-released Interstellar, and that's maybe my least favorite Chris Nolan movie, and I was still like tempted to go see it because like it's a big spectacle movie, and I really appreciate the fact that both of these filmmakers can do that and kind of draw people in, especially. And I know that Blade Runner 2049, I think, was unjustly uh hampered by the box office. I think it deserved a much bigger take than it got. Um, but both Dune movies have done really, really well, and I love the fact that it's like these movies are doing well, and they are based on incredibly esoteric novels that are, or a one singular esoteric novel that is not presented. They didn't like dumb it down, and by
yeah.
they I mean him and his
No,
co-writers.
that's a great point.
It's still an esoteric text, and yet it's a big crazy spectacle that people are buying into. I do think you're right. Like casting helps a ton, and the fact that both movies, but especially the second one, have so many like young hot actors in it. It was like that is so genius. I think like that's how you get people to come see your movie is if you have Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, uh,
Florence Pugh.
Florence Pugh, and Austin Butler all in one movie
Okay,
together.
okay, it's funny. It's funny that Hollywood kind of figured this out 100 years ago, and it's just still true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people will see stuff. That's what people talk about. Like they, like this star is big enough to open a movie. They say, and it's like on name alone. Like people don't really understand necessarily what Dune is, but they'll go see it with all those people in it. And you and I go see movies for character actors, and so like, the fact that Javier Bardem and uh, Josh Brolin and Christopher Walken and Stellan Skarsgård, it's like that's who I'm like super stoked to see, and of course Rebecca Ferguson, who is a leading lady who is also a character actor. Like she has the spirit of a character actor. She's also just one of the most beautiful people alive. So like, it's a real 1-2 punch there. I wish she was in which I think we talked about last year, maybe. Who even knows? But that I wish she was in Mission Impossible 7 more, but she's
yeah.
not.
And for those of you who have seen Dead Reckoning, I think she's coming back. I don't think she's.
I do not. She gave an interview fairly recently where she
Oh,
was
I think that interview proved. You know what? We'll save this. We'll
I
save this
guess
for
we'll
my
find out.
celebratory podcast next year. We get to all tell me how right I was.
I don't like I kind of would love to see her again, but now I really hope she's not in it just so you don't get a victory ever.
You know what? You're welcome, because now you got a win-win. Because now, if I'm right, you get to see her in another Mission Impossible, and if I'm wrong, you get to throw it in my face. You're welcome. I gave you a win-win.
Yeah, but I don't do stuff like that. I'm not from Boston.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I could already probably write the Slack message you'll send me when I'm wrong.
No, it doesn't matter. Anyway, okay. So before we get to our number ones, we are going to kind of do well, I guess we already did honorable mentions to a degree, but I'm going to talk about a couple that are low on my list, disappointing, and then also just like straight up not good, in my opinion. We've already talked, you and I, at length about Joker 2.
Yes, on video.
On video. You can go find that on Nerdist YouTube, which is basically just like this, but on video. The thing about that one is I didn't really like the first one that much. So it's not like I was disappointed necessarily by the second one, but it was not good. So there, you can find out more of our thoughts about that. I was very disappointed by Salem's Lot, and not just because that was a movie that I was excited was even coming out. That was one that was gonna maybe just get scrapped. It eventually just kind of got dropped on Max, but um, so I don't know. I just think it was a bad adaptation of that book. I think it was clearly cut to ribbons. And the book is so kind of, you need to spend enough time in Salem's Lot with the people of Salem's Lot to understand the tragedy of all of them getting turned into vampires. um, and so it's not like there was nothing I liked about it, but like it just wasn't particularly good. The most recent movie I saw that I guess what, it's bad. That it's the I've seen other people call it the uh what is the Arrested Development joke about dead doves or whatever? Like,
I don't know what I was expecting. Right?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
that. It's the I don't know what I was expecting award, which goes to Craven the Hunter, which I was like, it's not good. It's not as bad as a couple of the other ones in the SPUMC or the SSU or whatever you want to call them. But
I guess we probably don't have to guess what you thought of the lead actor.
look, I solidified what I thought of. So he does two things. He does eyebrow acting, which gets really old. It feels so fake. He's just like constantly doing stuff with his eyebrows. And then the other thing he does, especially in this movie, is because he's jacked in it. He's a big, huge muscle man. He does buff guy walk. Everywhere he goes, he's like constantly moving his shoulders. And it's just like, nobody fucking walks like that. And so it drives me insane because it's like he's just posing all the time. And I just thought it was a bad movie all around. It was a bad Leroy Brown. And it was a bad time at the movies. And then the other one, which is my literal bottom of the barrel, it is the dead last on my ranking, is a movie a lot of people said was fun and I thought was god awful, which was Under Paris, the Sharks Invade the Seine movie, which is not silly enough to be fun, and it takes itself way too seriously. It makes no sense at all. It's so big and stupid, overly violent for no reason. I'm mad that people tried to convince me that it was good because I wouldn't have watched it otherwise. And I thought it was legit terrible. All right, so those are my worsts. What are your worsts?
We shared Joker 2. I did not like the first one either, but I actually thought that would mean I might like the second one because
I
of
kind
the
of did
musical
too. I kind of did too.
I really enjoy Lady Gaga as an actress.
Mhm.
Like probably top 1% of her fans of her as an actress. We did a long video on this site. Go watch it. You'll see.
Yeah.
I didn't hate this movie, but it's a bad movie that is an absolutely fascinating film to watch, and I think I will go back and watch it in theater someday when it's re-released. Megalopolis.
Mm.
It is arguably the most insane movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
A movie that I didn't hate, but I didn't love, but it was very interesting. Kinds of Kindness. That movie is fascinating, but I just don't think it's good. Definitely interesting to watch, but I can't like say like, yeah, this is really good.
I liked it more than you did, but it definitely was like, it was kind of like the surprise because obviously Poor Things had just come out, or I guess it came out the year before, but and it won all those Oscars and everything like that, and it was sort of like a surprise then. Oh wow, there's another Yorgos Lanthimos movie, and look who's in it, and all this stuff, and like, it's, you have to really be on board with his type of movie making,
and I
and
am.
it's long, but
Yes.
there are 3 stories, and so if there's one you're not liking, each one is like maybe a feature length or almost feature length. So
I love Jesse and Plemons and Emma Stone in it. They're great, and everybody else is great. It just, the movie doesn't work for me, even if I think it's interesting. I think my biggest disappointment was Gladiator 2. I really thought the trailers looked great. I was on board with what it was doing for like the first 45 minutes to an hour, and then that movie gets aggressively stupid in the worst way. It is, I just can't even believe that movie and what the decisions they made and the story they told. A movie I had high expectations for that I thought specifically for me I would love was Boy Kills World. which is this like hyper reality.
Oh, yeah. That's another
It's
Bill
yeah,
movie, right?
Skarsgårds are everywhere. They are the
He did not
Skarsgårds
have
are
a good
everywhere.
year. I mean, Nosferatu notwithstanding, he was in that. He was in The Crow, which absolutely tanked, and I
Everybody
think there was maybe
hated.
even one other one.
Yeah, it's that movie should have worked, and I detested it. I really did. It was so annoying. Um, One of the worst movies I saw of the year was The Watchers, a film
Oh,
that
yeah. I
a
didn't
film
once you reviewed it, I was like, "I'm out. I
a
don't need
film
to
that
see
just
this."
doesn't even understand basic storytelling.
Yeah.
I will say this sometimes if the screenings where you turn to the other critics, you're like, "What'd you think of that?" And everybody has the exact same reaction. Like, "What are they thinking?" Is very funny moment. But the worst movie of the year for me is the worst review I've ever given a movie. It's a movie that I absolutely, actually, personally hate. Just not like just like it was Civil War. Civil War
Mm,
from a director I like, from a
yeah.
studio I love. I hated that movie. I won't go into it because we're not trying to be too negative. Go read my review at nerdist.com of it, and you will see the angriest I've ever been at a movie. The word vapid gets used a lot, only in film criticism, but my goodness, was it there's no movie I've ever seen that deserved that title more. Just a film that is wholly uninterested in the thing it's about. And strangely enough, he thinks it's a pro journalism movie, and I think it might be one of the most anti journalism movies I've ever seen, which is really hard to do. To think you're making a pro journalism movie, but to actually make an anti journalism movie. So
Yeah, I think that's my biggest issue with it is that, like, it I can't tell what it's pro or anti, and it's like, you can't make there are no such things as, uh, neutral war movies. That's not a thing. You can't be neutral to war and make a movie about war. Like, that it just makes no sense at all. And yeah, he's like, I don't know. It really made me kind of go like, "What, dude?" Like, Alex Garland made two of my favorite movies ever and wrote uh maybe two other ones that I absolutely adore. Um and then Men from a couple years ago was like, "Oh, okay, you have something to say here, but I'm not 100% on board with you." And then yeah, Civil War, it's like his biggest budget, and then learn he's not going to make movies after this, and it's just like, all right.
and by the way, every interview he gave about the film, there people would defend the movie, and then he would give an interview and completely undermine every defense they had made of him.
Totally. Be-
Um,
yeah.
the movie boils down to war is hell. Wow. What an insightful piece of filmmaking. War is bad. War is bad. The causes of war, those don't matter.
Yeah.
The,
We're
the
just talking about what happens on the ground
and
when bullets start flying.
yeah, the reasons we might go to war, who cares? Those are unimportant. Just war is bad. And also, like, I heard people be like, well, at least, it looked great. No, it didn't. It's got like some of the most middling, average, mediocre war scenes you've ever seen. I think he just genuinely wanted to be like, what would it look like if somebody tried to like storm the Lincoln Memorial? Okay, not
Yeah.
stupid. It would look kind of stupid because like there's nothing there. It's just a statue. The movie has no internal logic because it doesn't care about anything. It's not about anything. And considering the supposed subject matter in the year of 2024, I actually think it's a wholly irresponsible movie.
Mm.
Yeah. After saying I don't want to get too negative, but
Sometimes you can't help it.
I
Sometimes you
will
really
be
can't help it.
I will be fired up about this for a long time in a way I typically am not with movies. Like let's put it this way. I didn't even remember The Watchers until I was reviewing the list of 2024 releases to see like, hey, what would I want to talk about? Oh yeah, The Watchers. That was garbage. Like
Yeah.
whereas Civil War, anytime I even see it, like, oh, it's like I still pay for cable because I'm old. Like flipping around, Civil War's on HBO. Visceral reaction.
Yeah.
Oh, The Watchers is on. Oh, that was stupid. There's a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. All right. Number ones all around. Uh I'm going to just, if you listened to my kind of my solo the state of the movie industry so far podcast in July when I talked about my at the time favorite movies, I'm going to say that this movie has not gone anywhere. Uh, but I'm just for the sake of like that is a movie that is just for me, and I don't even think like on a very subjective list like this it necessarily needs to be my number one. But I will say that Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger, is still like my favorite thing I watched this year. It's a documentary about as told through the voice and eyes and experiences of Martin Scorsese growing up watching those movies. Um, it's just kind of a history of the filmmakers Powell and Pressburger. It's wonderful if you're predisposed to liking documentaries about movies and kind of retrospective documentaries. It's great. My actual number one that I'm talking about today is a movie that even the filmmakers are tired of talking about in a jokey way because it was a festival movie from 2022 that has slowly been going from festival to festival and cleaning up and just being an audience favorite, and is finally getting to the point where people are actually able to watch it. And that is Mike Cheslick's movie Hundreds of Beavers, which, try as I might, nothing has made me as happy watching a movie this year as Hundreds of Beavers, which is one of the silliest things. It is a almost silent. It's basically just like, it's basically like a Buster Keaton cartoon about a 19th century Applejack salesman who must go from zero to hero and become North America's greatest fur trapper by defeating an entire army of beavers. And all the beavers are just people in all the animals in the whole movie are just people in like mascot outfits, and it's so silly. And um it's just a silly, dumb, silly movie, and I love it so much. It's such a blast to watch if you get a group of friends together. um it's how long is it? It's 108 minutes, which you might go, that's a bit long, but there's enough like partitions within it, and the story moves and everything like
108's
that.
fine. That's good. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
um but yeah, it's wonderful. I cannot say like me describing it is almost not even worth doing because it's just so like just watch it and enjoy it. But like I gave it 5 stars. A ton of people I know gave it 5 stars. I just for um uh completeness sake, I should say that I tangentially know the filmmaker. I've met him and we've chatted and stuff like that. But his wife used to work for Nerdist, but I didn't know him at the time, and I only met him after the movie came out and everything. It doesn't matter. I'm just telling you this. It has
Man of
nothing to,
integrity.
it's not nepotism or whatever. Um, but it's really funny. It's really, really funny. And I would highly recommend everybody watch Hundreds of Beavers because, it's just a silly, silly fun time.
All right. My
Your
number
number
one,
one, I know exactly what it is.
you
And
know what it is,
it's also a silly, silly fun time.
and here's the thing. I maybe it seems lazy. I don't care. Yes, it's a superhero movie. Yes, it has a bunch of superheroes in it, but I think it's obvious. Madam Web, my number one movie of the year.
Did
Uh,
that come out this year?
I checked before I made the joke. It did. It feels like that movie came out 7 years ago.
It
You know what
sure
it is?
does.
Because it came out right before the Oscars, so they made multiple jokes at the Oscars about Madam Web, which makes it feel
Yeah.
like it came out a year and a half ago. Except it came out earlier this year, which means it came out 17 years ago. Anything that happened at the beginning of 2024 was 17 years ago. No, it's Deadpool and Wolverine, and in terms of this I think really does define best versus like favorite. This is not the best movie I saw this year. I think there are some obvious, I don't want to say glaring, but I just think there's some obvious flaws and ways that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Everything I want from a theater experience to just be swept up, to be surprised, to laugh, to get them. It has everything you want in that. I could not believe they pulled that movie off. I did not know. I don't go looking for spoilers, which helps. But a lot of times they just come to us anyway, right? Oh, who's going to be in here? We see, because of our jobs, we see. I did not know anything that was going to happen in that film, and everything landed. Um, I went to a screening. My wife actually got to come to that one. She didn't even know half of like the basis for like characters and stuff. Like she didn't know anything about Channing Tatum and Gambit and the history of trying to get that film made. And it didn't matter. It still worked for her. She couldn't believe it. She was laughing the whole time. It's so funny. It's so good. I think it is the best Wolverine performance from Hugh Jackman.
Mm,
I absolutely love what he's doing in that film. I love how it pays off years and years of expectations, like the way that they turned his uniform, right, his costume, his superhero costume, his Wolverine costume, into a meaningful part of the movie, when it would have been just so easy to say something like, what are you talking about? Everybody wears them, right? Like, because it's a
yeah.
multiverse. We don't like, they didn't have to give a reason. Not only did they give a reason, they made it an integral part of his character. It's such a great payoff to something we'd always wanted to see. It's just really fun. And it, what I especially loved about that movie, despite being tied into the multiverse, and like it helped if you had seen Loki, but at the same time, the movie just didn't care about anything except having fun.
Right.
It didn't care about canon. It didn't care. Let Marvel Studios figure out what this means for the canon going forward. We're just going to do our own thing. We're not here to set up anything else. We're actually here to finish an entire generation of superhero stories while having a blast doing it. It was somehow everything I hoped I'd get from that movie, with a whole bunch of surprises for things I never expected. And it just completely worked for me.
Yeah, me too. Like I was just over the moon about this movie when I watched it the first time. I was less, which is not to say that I disliked it in any way, but I eventually watched it with my wife, who, similar to your wife, is not up on all this hoopla. But she likes the Deadpool movies, and so was really into, really wanted to watch it and enjoyed it. Um, Probably missed a fair amount of stuff, and I kind of like tried to fill in where I could, but like she doesn't want to. She doesn't necessarily need like an entire Cliff's Notes that I think she might need in order to understand all of it, but she doesn't. She's like you said, she'll pick it up. They pick up things. People who don't follow these things. And it actually gives me kind of hope going forward that it's like you can make a movie which is as esoteric as a movie can be, which is a movie about the fact that these movies aren't going to get made anymore, but still might in another universe. And like, just it's so about the movie business, um, from the perspective of characters who aren't going to exist anymore. And it's just like, that's such a fun idea. Also, it has all the X-Men stuff that I love and everything. And you're absolutely right about Hugh Jackman is so good as this Wolverine. And like, to the point where the yellow costume Wolverine is now like what I just think of when I think of Wolverine in the movies, even though it's only just been in this one movie. So yeah, I loved it. I loved it as well. And I'm really happy that we got it. And I do think that there are people involved in the making of it that I'm tired of. But this movie did not irk me the way that I was glad that it didn't irk me.
Yeah,
Because I just,
there's a version of this movie that's fine.
yeah,
There's a version of this movie that's annoying. There's multiple versions of this movie that's really just disappointing, just like doesn't live up to the expectations. I just think they delivered. And it was just so much fun. And it's funny because like we see these Marvel movies, right? And then we get together and we say, "Oh, what are we going to write about? What do we have to explain? How does this connect to the next film? What about This one came out, we were all just like, "Oh man, that was fun. Can we just write about how much fun we had?" And
yeah,
like anchor we got to think about we have to think about anchor beings going forward. We did not have to think about anchor beings while watching the movie.
no,
It just didn't matter. And it was, again, not a perfect movie as usual. Marvel struggles with its villains, right? Like doesn't always develop enough, but I didn't care. Whatever flaws it had were easily overcome by all of the highs it hits, including what I think might be the best joke of the year of any movie I saw, was when Deadpool tells Elektra, "Sorry about your Daredevil," and she goes, "Eh."
yeah, it's good. Well, that one, like, my wife howled at that one, and I'm damn skippy she didn't see either Daredevil or Elektra, but she at least knew
Yeah,
who was in those movies,
yeah.
and
Hardest I've laughed in the theater all year.
it's there's another one that I laughed really hard at, uh, um, like that one also, but when, um, um, I forget when he says it, but Deadpool says, uh, of Wolverine, he really let himself go since the divorce, and I
Oh
was
my
just like,
god. Oh my god,
it
and
was like a gut
it's
punch.
so funny. And, by the way, if you rewatch that scene too, like, it's not like they have Hugh Jackman react, right?
No.
It and which makes it so much funnier that it's just Deadpool breaking that fourth wall,
Yeah.
like, to himself, to us. It works so good. It and by the way, they even turn, like, the breaking the fourth wall into a pretty funny joke with Nice Pool, right? Where it's like, "Oh, we're doing gentle fourth wall breaking. I could do that. The proposal." It's like, "What do you think I" and if it just so many good jokes in that, and that is I didn't go see it again in theaters, but that as soon as it was on streaming, that
Yeah.
was one I rewatched, and I will say some of the pacing issues I had the first time around, I didn't have as much the second. So,
Yeah, for sure. Once you know what's happening, once you know where it's going. And there's some really cool, just like really great scenes, like the scene where um and Emma Corrin is really good. They are having a really great year also. They're also in Nosferatu. Um but um when Cassandra Nova is like inside Wolverine's head and like he's walking, they're in that kind of weird like field that has those big pillars that I guess are representative of the people who have died, like, you know, like all the other X-Men and everybody. I think that scene is so good.
it's
Like,
so good.
and
It
it's just, yeah, it's a scene like that. And like you said, like in a perfect world, I think Hugh Jackman would get a nomination for this. He won't. But because we do not live in a perfect world. But I think that would be a good nod to the fact that that movie made a poop ton of money and also um was beloved, I think, for most people. So, but it won't.
he has a few scenes like that. There's the one where he's sitting by the fire and Laura comes to talk to him and she says it's like he starts to like spill his guts and she says it's okay and he goes, "No, I have to say it."
Yeah.
And it's so believable. Like that's another line of dialogue that in lesser hands could come across as we just want him to say it. But he's just kind of bearing his soul and he does this the thing he does so well in this film is that he never gets too emotional. He lets the fact that he's fighting it and holding back speak to just how badly he's feeling. But even then, like he gets a chance when he's in the car, right? They're in the car and he's screaming at Deadpool about how, that you're a joke and everything. And
Hmm.
that's as good as anything I saw anybody do on screen this year. And I walked out of that film. I was like, they should just nominate him for this. This is,
Yeah.
I mean, because not only is he doing all of that stuff, he's also really funny. He's so funny in this film. From the first time we see him, I mean, not even the variants, we see that actual Wolverine the first time in the bar. He's just really funny and intense and sad. It's really remarkable. And we did companion pieces, me and Eric Diaz, about this should be his last time as Wolverine. This should launch a whole new era of him.
Hmm.
I lean towards this is perfect. This is perfect. Go out right here. But if they bring him back till he's 90 years old, like Deadpool said, I'm not going to complain because it's just talk about perfect casting and the perfect actor for a role.
Yeah. He is Wolverine. And Deadpool is fine. But even he's good at it. I have to admit, like it's two actors who are born to play those roles, I think. And over years developed it to become that. So yeah. All right. Well, that's our very strange top 5 lists, and also like a shout out to 7 or 8 other movies each.
And negative shoutouts to a few.
Yeah. Some of those movies, get out of here. But yeah, so next year, I'll just say right now, the movie I'm most looking forward to is Superman. I think I I got to go see the trailer early. By the time you hear this, folks, the teaser will already be out, but I got to go see it early, and I've just kind of been buzzing about Superman since then. So really stoked to have that to look forward to in July. All right, folks. Well, thank you very much for listening. Thank you, of course, Mikey. How can people find you and your bullshit on the internet should they choose to do so?
Burger Mike at Blue Sky. That's the only place I really post. And of course, the greatest website that anybody ever created, Nerdist.com.
Even better than Google. You can follow me at Blue Sky at Kyle D. Anderson. You can follow me at Instagram, functional_nerd. And you can follow me on Letterboxd at Kyle_Anderson. Thank you very much, folks, for listening to another calendar year of Laser Focus. As I've said before, we're taking 2 weeks off, and we will be back the first full week of January. So until then, I've been Kyle Anderson. Join me again next year on Laser Focus. Oh my heavens.
There it is.
Join me again next year on Laser Focus when my guest will be a different person, probably. Goodbye. Laser Focus is a production of Nerdist Industries and Legendary Digital Networks. It was produced, edited, and hosted by me, Kyle Anderson. For more, visit Nerdist.com.